Hello again, everyone. This is your favourite person on the internet, in my mind, B. Harper from supermask.com, and I'd like to welcome you again to another book review. So today I'm just going to have a little bit of fun and review Oliver Bowden's adaptation of Assassin's Creed, The Secret Crusade, starring Altair Ibn Lahad. Alright, so first and foremost, as I have already said, this book is an adaptation of the first game, but it doesn't just cover the events of it. There is actually a lot of history going on in this novel, but before I continue further, I'm just going to read the back blurb of the book, just to give you an idea about, the wheres and the wherefores, and then I'm going to go into the review itself. Okay? Cool. Altair embarks on a formidable mission, one that takes him throughout the Holy Land and shows him the true meaning of the Assassin's Creed. To demonstrate his commitment, Altair must defeat 9 deadly enemies, including the Templar leader Robert de Sab. Altair's life story is told here for the first time, a journey that changes the course of history, his ongoing battle with the Templar conspiracy, a family life that is as tragic as it is shocking, and the ultimate betrayal of an old friend. Right off the bat, allow me to illustrate. So I have a huge connection with Assassin's Creed because I'm a major fan of the series, but I'm definitely one of the first people who will freely admit that Ubisoft are really pushing their luck when it comes to some of these games. The way I figure it, this story has found really no resolution from like the first game, and I don't know what these folks plan on doing with the series, but I really do hope they actually answer the questions that they have posed to us so far. So there is a huge element of cash grabbing in, making these games and just all of that, but I really do applaud the franchise by actually using the backdrop of actual human history in order to tell a fictional story. Of course, this is not the first series that has done that, but what I like most about the Assassin's Creed franchise is that it isn't just a stationary thing, much like history itself. History changes all the time, and so do the people. So for every single game to have a protagonist, learn what it is to be an assassin and, embark on a life journey, it is always a good thing to just, get to know a character incredibly intimately. Now, those of you who have played the first game will know that Altair, while cool, while the absolute legend he is, he isn't really the most relatable character. I feel that the character of Ezio Auditore da Firenze, he is the more relatable, shall we say, but that is a story for another time. So this book essentially chronicles all of Altair's life rather than what's just in the game itself. It tells of his birth, his youth, his upbringing as an assassin. This kid was inducted to become a hitman in the Crusades. I mean, at this point the Assassin Order is it is incredibly powerful, and it takes a very sort of active stake in the Crusades. And the reason why the Assassins is to not only oppose the wishes of the Templar Order. The Templars are essentially the yin to the Assassin's yang. They're both opposing forces, but essentially they kind of want the same thing. They want to help humanity, but they have very different ways of doing it. So what the Templars are after in this book is a thing called the Piece of Eden. Now the Piece of Eden is a divine relic. It doesn't come from God or anything like that. It comes from a race of beings that were here before humans were, and basically made the world, what it is today, in a sense. They were basically the progenitor race. Think of them as, say, the Titans from Greek mythology. They are the ones who constructed the world. They are the ones that created the beings who would come to live on it, and eventually there was this huge catastrophe, and these old beings pretty much winked out of existence. But behind, they left these holy relics. So what the Assassins and Templars want to do is to obtain these relics as a means of furthering the human race, and thereby protecting it. So that is pretty much the baseline of every one of the games in this series. But what Oliver Bowden does in these novels, he's written a whole sort of series of these books. What he's done is that he's adapted almost every single one of the games into written form, and he is so brilliant at giving these characters a thought process. When you're playing the games, you only really know what a character is thinking when they say it, or like when you see an expression on their faces. For instance, in this book, Altair is like front and center. He is the lead character. He is the one whose mind is open to you from page 1. And what I really do like is that it gives you more insight to how Altair is. In the game, he's just this really cool badass who wears like a white terry robe or something. Like, yeah, just go with it, guys. But the fact of the matter is, Bowden has taken the time to go behind the scenes and further research the character. So Ubisoft made Altair to be a full functioning human being, but there's only so much that they could show in the game. But Altair has a very, very tragic family history. And the fact of the matter is that when you get to know a character so intimately, that is when you fully understand how they feel. And what Bowden does here is that he gives you that insight that the games really do lack. So, points to Bowden for just, going behind the lines and just trying to find out more about this mysterious man. And that's what's happened. This entire book reveals to you Altair's character arc. In the game, you see somewhat of an arc occurring because, to begin with, Altair is young and cocky, he's a bit of a jackass, but he's still very serious about the work he does. He just gets a little too big for his boots. So most of the game is devoted to making Altair become humble again and see that he is not the infallible individual that he believed himself to be. So that whole game was basically his quest of finding himself again. In Bowden's book, you start from, point A to point B to B, C, D, E, F, and, all the way through. Altair is not just stuck in one cycle. He actually goes through his life and he experiences all these pleasures and these heartaches and all these massive events that change his perception of the creed as well as himself. It's a very sort of well-constructed book when you think about it. It is so quick to read. It really doesn't have a lot of pages, in all seriousness. I mean, look at this. But there is so much detail being packed onto paper here, and what's really cool is that you can appreciate it. It's not done in a fleeting way. Bowden gives you enough to really assemble together this character as a whole being, not just as a bunch of pixels on a screen. It is pretty cool. So, without saying too much more about the plot itself, that's pretty much all the really good parts I love about this book. That and the fact that, even though Assassin's Creed is indeed a historical fantasy, it still has roots to our culture. So I feel, in a sense, Assassin's Creed is able to get those who aren't necessarily, very book inclined to find out more about their history. Like, Assassin's Creed is able to enable you to be curious and find out more about the period that each and every one of its games takes place in. So I really got to give it props for, doing that. So without further ado, I would give Assassin's Creed The Secret Crusade a 4 out of 5. A really solid 4 out of 5. It could have done with a little more detail about, how Altair thinks, and a little more clarity about, the situations that he finds himself in. But in retrospect, this is a damn good book. Not only is it a faithful adaptation of a game, but it goes above and beyond the Call of Duty in order to, tell you a fully functional and completely fleshed out story of this character who may have come across as a cipher on a console game, but in all actuality, he was a thinking, feeling human being. who goes through some pretty significant shit. So thank you once again for listening to me, guys, and as usual, I shall see you in the next video. Bye bye for now.